Even over 20 years after its initial inception, Monster Rancher as a franchise is one of the most unique ideas gaming, let alone monster collecting games, has ever seen. Using cities to generate unique monsters for the player to raise and train isn't just inventive, it's genuinely fun and addictive, and playing Monster Rancher 1 and 2 DX reinforced that feeling for me, giving me that same feeling of giddy anticipation right before summoning a monster that I had playing the series all those years ago. If you've never heard of Monster Rancher before, it's a monster collector in the same vein as a series like Digimon, where you obtain your monster, then train and feed them from week to week in game, and test them in battles against other monster tamers. As I stated before, what set Monster Rancher apart from its contemporaries is that in order to obtain your monsters, you would scan real-life discs in your PlayStation system, and different discs will give you different monsters. Scanning Michael Jackson's Thriller will give you one unique monster, while scanning Eminem's Eminem Show will grant you another. And the options are just a handful either. There are a lot of unique monsters across various races to obtain, some even being super rare and powerful, and some just being downright bizarre. So I explained the concept of Monster Rancher, and I'm sure some of you are thinking to yourselves, wait a minute Bao, the Switch doesn't have a disk drive, so how does that work? Well, I'm happy to explain. Koei Tecmo went the extra mile with these re-releases and preloaded a ridiculously massive CD database into the game. So instead of having to scour the house for random CDs, now all you have to do is simply input the artist and or the name of the album, and a list will pop up for you to choose from to summon your monster from. While I don't know the exact number of albums they included, I tried some pretty obscure stuff and pretty much all of it was in the database, including re-releases and collections. So after you make your monster, it's off to raising them and playing them in tournaments to test their power. The basic gameplay loop of Monster Rancher is pretty simplistic and as a result has made these games age almost shockingly well. You can pass a week in game at your Monster Ranch having your monster rest, train, or battle in a tournament. Training courses will either raise one dedicated skill or two, though if you do the latter it will likely decrease a third skill as a trade-off. Training is automated with the monster doing a cute visual minigame that changes whether it succeeds or fails. Out of training, resting, and battling, training takes up the most time, since it's of course how you raise your monster's stats and because of the minigame animations. Though thankfully these re-releases add a fast forward feature for those that want to use it. There's even special courses where for an often steep price, your monster will undergo rigorous training for a month to gain extra stats, and in Monster Rancher 2, possibly learn new attacks for battle. Training and battling tires out your monster, so sometimes you'll have to take a week off to let them rest. Not allowing your monster to rest isn't just ethically wrong, but will decrease their loyalty to you, and in Monster Rancher 2, even stress them out, which can lead to them running away for weeks at a time, or worse, outright dying. Battles in Monster Rancher are primarily done in tournaments, usually held in round-robin fashion, but sometimes in single elimination as well. You and the opponent's monsters stand on opposite ends of the arena and move closer and further away from each other with the shoulder buttons. Your distance determines what attacks you can use, as the placement of an attack on the skill bar corresponds to what distance they can be used from, like a punch typically being close to the opponent or an energy beam being far away. There's two main statistics to pay attention to in battles: guts/will and accuracy. Guts and will are the same thing, it's just labeled differently depending on if you're playing Monster Rancher 1 or 2. Think of it as your MP, with moves requiring a certain amount to be used and it only replenishing slowly over the course of a battle. Managing the stat wisely to fit your monster's playstyle can be the difference between victory or defeat. Accuracy speaks for itself, as it of course determines your chance of attacking the enemy. Accuracy is also my main and maybe only sense of annoyance with these games. It's tied to the skill stat, but I swear no matter how much I raise it, my accuracy stays terrible and battles are often just me missing the vast majority of my attacks. It's a hindrance on an otherwise super fun battle system. Accuracy annoyances aside, these battles are fun, and you don't even have to control them yourself if you don't want to. There's an option to let your monster battle on its own, and the AI in doing so is shockingly competent if you want to just sit back. These tournaments are held at random points in the year, so you'll have to manually check your calendar and make sure you don't miss any you want to participate in. There are also special tournaments to look out for that when won will increase your monster's rank, allowing you to tackle the next more difficult tier of tournaments all the way from ranks E to S. That's the basic flow of Monster Rancher, and it can be very satisfying seeing your monster go from weak to a powerhouse as it progresses through its life, although that life is unfortunately finite. You see, monsters in Monster Rancher don't live forever. They have their own lifespans that when run out will force you to retire them and choose a new monster to use. But if you want, you can pass on their traits to a new monster before this happens. Monsters can be frozen in the game's lab, allowing you to literally keep them on ice until you want to use them again, or if you want to fuse two of them together. Fusion has you taking a base monster and turning it into something new with the assigned traits of a secondary monster. I didn't mess with it too much while playing these games for review, but for a fee you can use it to your heart's content. There's a few other things you can do while playing as well, like feeding your monsters special items that can raise their loyalty, thus improving their responsiveness in battles, treats that reduce their stress levels, and so on. Or at random times during your time in your ranch, you may get a visitor that'll let you go on expeditions in ruins, where you'll have to guide your monster through a maze and search for rare treasures. These events don't happen super often, so they're a nice change of pace when they do. In terms of differences between Monster Ranchers 1 and 2, there actually aren't too many, but the ones that are there are pretty noticeable. The first being that there's a pretty noticeable facelift from the first game to the second. The ranch feels bigger, backgrounds are much more detailed, and it just overall feels like you're playing a more ambitious game, with expanded items to use, more variety in monsters, and a couple slice of life changes like your monsters gaining stats for successfully winning tournaments. In terms of what Koei Tecmo added to the Game Freeze re-releases, it didn't just stop at the revamped CD system or the fast forward option. You can now freeze 20 monsters at a time, say the original release is 10. There's now records showing your training history in case you need a reminder. You can even pit your monsters in random battles against others online, even in a ranked mode if you desire. Sadly, I didn't get to test out online, however. For Monster Rancher 2 specifically, the game has remixed music you can choose from in the menu, and all regions of the game will now have previously region-exclusive monsters that were in the original PS1 release. Monster Rancher is a series I grew up loving after the Saturday morning anime introduced me to it, and getting to revisit it with 1 and 2 has reinforced not only my fondness for the series, but my belief that Monster Rancher still has a place in the modern gaming landscape. Whether you grew up with it like I have, or have never heard of the series before, Monster Rancher 1 and 2 DX are worth your time if you need something besides Pokemon or SMT to scratch that monster raising itch. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe for more content like this, and check out other videos I've done like ranking 30 Super Robot Wars games, or discussing whether story or gameplay are more important in RPGs. Thanks for watching guys, I'll see you next time.